So, ranked recommendations. Shimakaze. Shimakaze surprisingly is always decent, mostly because Shimakaze's torpedo power is always a threat, and Shimakaze's concealment is always been the best. Thank you, DK Health, for the 700 bits. I mean, it's kind of similar to every season. I mean, not a whole lot have changed. Honestly, the biggest difference is Riftoffen being added, which we can get into. But Shima will always be a decent pick. The good players will be really nasty to deal with because they will use their concealment and they will use their gun power to be effective. And the potatoes will sail to the 1 and or the 10 line, and they will try to flank torpedo, or they will try to YOLO and die. You know, the usual dumb potato. Biggest counter to Shima, of course, this season is going to be Smolensk. If there's a lot of DDs, then Smolensk is going to reign supreme because it hard counters DDs. Harugumo, trash tier, just even with the new legendary, just trash tier. It's too easy to torp and smokes. Carriers dumpster it, Battleship AP dumpster it, radar dumpsters it. Absolutely no. Hayate is like a combination of Shimakaze and Harugumo, except it has all the downsides. It has the 127mm guns that don't have the improved pen of the Harugumo, but on the other hand, it's got Harugumo's terrible concealment, and it handles like an absolute brick. Hayate is just shit tier. Yes, you can have decent games in random battles, blah blah blah. Yeah, I've had decent games. That doesn't mean it's a good ship. It's not. Zao, bit of a poster child for power creep. This one, carriers dumpster it. And, well, the one gimmick it used to have was 30mm armor, but then Wargaming was like, you get 30mm armor match, and you get 30mm armor match, and you get 30mm armor match. And now it doesn't really matter anymore, so now it's just a heavy cruiser with a poor health pool that gets blapped by everything. So, still a good kiting flank ship, but, I mean, that relies on the enemy team pushing into you. Yoshino, Mega Zao, once again, I'm not sure why you would bring a Yoshino over any other cruiser. It lacks utility. I mean, the HE hits really hard and it's got 50mm pen, which is nice if there were ship. I mean, if the enemy runs Stalingrad, then. But even then, I'm not sure I'd like to play Yoshino into Stalingrad. Like, Stalingrad can sit there and tank your HE for a long time, and if you make one mistake, you get Citadel. So, nah, I don't like the Yoshino as a pick either. Yamato, every year, a solid choice. Simply because it's the one ship that can overmatch other battleships. Of course, if there's the likes of Kremlins and such, you will struggle to be too effective. But, and especially right now, before they fix the expert marksman bug on PTS, your Turtverse is completely absurd. So, yeah, you have Turtverse Yamato really shouldn't have right now, which is incredibly effective. So, yeah, you blab kind of everything in the Yamato. The downside is, of course, if you're forced to push in or if you're forced to brawl, then Yamato is a really poor ship. And against carriers, your AA is... I mean, your AA is very, very unimpressive. Very unimpressive. Shikishima is basically a worse Yamato. That's really it. You have more secondary firepower, but you don't. Once again, you don't want to push in and you don't want to brawl in a Yamato hull because you're one big, huge citadel. Hakuryu, amazing, like overpowered, fantastic pick, just like every season. That's carriers. Rockets to deal with DDs, AP bombers to deal with everything else, and torpedo bombers to deal with anything that's still alive. God tier pick as always. Gearing. Well, if AA actually did something and it was worth running defensive AA, it might be effective. That 21mm plating isn't quite as effective as it used to be. Gearing has always been a decent gunboat, and for ranked, obviously the legendary module has more value than for random, so you can actually get some pretty damn competitive concealment down to 5.6, which is Shima's concealment. Makes for a good team player, good cap contester, but the torpedo power isn't that impressive, and the DPM has gotten power crept pretty hard, and add in a bunch of radar, and the experience isn't quite that nice anymore. Submerged is kind of like the better gearing. No, you don't have the same firepower or armor, or you can't get the concealment with the legendary, but in return you have significantly more torpedo power, which means you're just more effective. Des Moines, it's a great pick every year. Of course, with Manfred von Richthofen being added, being a cruiser isn't exactly a fun experience, but I mean, Des Moines players should be used to running into Hakuryu AP bombers. So basically, Des Moines players are used to being screwed over by that. The IFHE rework, of course, gave it that 30mm plating, which would be a really nice upgrade if Wargaming stopped adding ships that can overmatch it. Generally speaking, though, Des Moines has always done well, and Des Moines will probably continue to always do well. That's pretty much it. Worcester, IFHE kind of brutalized this ship. Your fire chance is pretty much gone. Carriers, well, the AA has one of the main reasons to play it. The AA has gotten some significant hits. It still has more AA than most ships, but the nerf to radar, the radar range, and the nerf to IFHE has kind of pushed Worcester out of meta. It still has really, really disgusting DPM, and it can still absolutely melt ships. But it's a rough experience to play nowadays. Worcester can work, don't get me wrong, and if you do like get a friendly smoker or something, Worcester can cause a whole lot of dakka, but not really that effective. It's fallen off. It's too many rough nerfs on it. Puerto Rico, the cruiser that without a citadel basically. The citadel is practically underwater on this thing. It is a Puerto Rico is just a it's a strong heavy cruiser, but honestly, if you can afford the Puerto Rico, you probably can afford the Stalingrad, and Stalingrad is fundamentally just a better Puerto Rico. Poor concealment, just like Stalingrad, but unlike that one, you don't have the 12 km super radar, and you don't have magical AP shells either. So hard time justifying the Puerto Rico, really. It can be a pretty fun ship to play, I'll give you that, because you can do drive-bys on a bunch of ships and get away with it, but the handling, the concealment, it can be fairly rough. Salem, a Des Moines that, well, I'd say a nerf Des Moines. It kind of depends. If you got competent teammates and if you get the trade nose in against any other cruiser, the Des Moines already dumpsters them, but Salem kind of dumpsters them even harder because it has super heal, which makes it so much harder to kill. However, you do give up radar utility, and I'm not really sure if you do want to be giving up radar utility, especially in ranked, because, well, you don't know what the hell your teammates are bringing there. And if there's no carrier and there's a lot of DDs around, then the fact that you have to pick and choose between hydro and radar is a huge downside for the Salem. So you're stuck with defensive AA, and defensive AA is like the worst consumable right now. So you're much more limited in the Salem than you are in the Des Moines. Montana, not really a whole lot of good reasons to run this one these days. Ohio is straight up a better. It is straight up a better Montana. So I don't really know why you would run Montana. Montana is just. He is the poster child of power creep, so not a whole lot of reasons to run this one. 406mm guns, which sadly are a weakness to have, a significant weakness to have in tier 10 these days. And honestly, I don't see much point in this ship. It also has some of the poorest rudder shift in the game. Like if you want to go fire resistance spec, you end up with a rudder shift that I'm surprised they've kept the way it is, because, well, rudder shift to 22.2 seconds isn't that nice when something like the Ohio has 18.6, 4 seconds better without any upgrades. Ohio is of course recommended. Ohio is a strong ship. It's a Montana, but better basically in every way. You don't get the more effective heal of the Montana, but in return you get the fast reloading heal. And usually that's more valuable because it keeps you alive better, especially in a ship like the Ohio that wants to push in and kind of wants to brawl. Ohio has 457mm guns, which means you overmatch just the likes, whereas the Salem or Des Moines can park nose in and kind of farm.
Keep up the great streams.
Spartan Knight, thank you for 13. Whereas the Des Moines or Salem can kind of park nose in. Let me close the doors. My door has ready to issues. There we go. Whereas Salem and Ohio can Salem and Des Moines can kind of tank a Montana. If they try to do the same against Ohio, the 457mm guns overmatches the shit out of them very, very easily. Add in the fact that you have secondaries that have American secondary dispersion, which means improved dispersion, so you don't even need manual secondaries for these to be fairly effective. You also have great AA, and yeah, there's really not a whole lot of downsides to Ohio. Ohio is just a very strong ship. Midway, obviously, always gonna be a great pick. But with the likes, when Manfred von Richthofen exists right now, it's hard to justify anything else because that ship is kind of busted. Like at least you're not playing Audacious. Like that's if you're gonna play a carrier, don't play Audacious. That's really the TLDR there. Kaba, I mean, is there ever really any reason to play Kaba anymore? No, there's really not. Everything dumpsters Kaba. Everything beats Kaba. People who die to Kaba are the potatoes that you could kill faster in any other ship. Kaba is trash. Grozovoy, not quite as good as it used to be, in big part due to AA nerfs and so forth, but Kaba is always a pretty decent ship. It has a there's a fair bit of outplay potential. You got basically every consumable known to man except Hydro, which you kind of want. You got a really good AP pen on the guns. You can Citadel the likes of Minotaur and Smolensk, but Kaba, Grozovoy is a decent ship. Overall, though, Grozovoy is an okay pick. It really, the biggest downside of the Grozo is the clumsiness, and they keep adding ships that have really flat shells, like really fast shells. They do it to help deal with ships like Kleber and Marceau that they added, but the problem is other ships that like to open water gunboat like the Grozovoy, well, they are much easier to hit now because it's just not fast enough to evade them. Also, carriers, of course, deal with Grozovoy fairly easily if you don't have a smoke. Moskva. If Hakuryu and Richthofen didn't exist, Moskva could be a decent pick. Moskva has always been pretty okay. Of course, flat railguns and so forth, but if you try to play a Moskva and the enemy has a Richthofen, it's what you should do is start a stopwatch until it kills you, and if it goes past 10 minutes, well done, you get an achievement. The big issue, of course, with Richthofen is that it has those AP rockets that can Citadel cruisers easily, and Moskva is infamous for being incredibly easy to Citadel when giving broadside because the Citadel is so huge. So Manfred von Richthofen rockets can hit you for 30k if he gets a broadside with just the rockets, and then he's got the torpedoes and the bombers as well. So ultimately you are a juicy target and very easy for him to take down, and you will hate your life fighting it. And just Moskva has fallen off pretty hard. It's there's not a whole lot of reason to bring it because of that. Nevsky, pretty solid pick, as long as you play it mid to long range. The problem is, of course, trying to push close range, you kind of suck. The main gimmick, the main treat that you have in this thing is, of course, your radar. You have a 36 second if you run the upgrade. 36 second 12 km radar, which is a really long range and really long duration radar, and your concealment is 12.8, so it's really not that hard to effectively use it. And this combined with your railguns, you can blap a lot of light cruisers, DDs, and you can even farm others. So Nevsky, I think, will be a decent pick, but not as easy to play as the Petropavlovsk. Petro is being nerfed. They're nerfing the concealment to 12.1. Right now it's 11.7, I think, so you can stealth radar as is right now. Petro is, of course, I would say an option to the Des Moines, whereas a Des Moines will hesitate. Well, as a Des Moines will happily push into another cruiser nose in and dumpster him, and it will hesitate if it runs into a battleship. The Petropavlovsk is kind of the other way around. If you run into a cruiser nose in, you might not want to fight it with the Petropavlovsk because your HE-DPM isn't that good. But on the other hand, if you run into a BB, you kind of just want to go Citadel him because these guns have the same pen as 380mm AP. So very effective. Yeah, Petropavlovsk, of course, has incredible armor and a very low broadside, which makes it much less vulnerable to said rockets from Richthofen. Petro is gonna be a pretty strong choice. It's really good in random battles, and I would see in smaller scales of ranked, I could see this thing being very effective with the radar as well. Stalingrad, always a fantastic rank pick. Petro might make life harder, but it's probably still gonna come through just fine because the guns are so damn good. Can we see a Gross Korfust play? I literally just played Gross Korfust. Like, before I started this game, I played a Gross Korfust game. So go back in the VOD for a bit and you can see a gross score for the game. Smolensk. Smolensk is always decent, but I mean, Smolensk has kind of a low skill ceiling when it comes to effectiveness. You have one role and that's farming damage. Ideally, people will push in and be farmed, but if they don't, and you have to make plays, Smolensk is a pretty poor cruiser for making plays. It is annoying and it's very potato-proof because of the thin citadel armor, but it just struggles making too many of the plays. What is this? Oof, that post. I just saw that post. Jesus. Kremlin, just always great. Small-scale battles. And if you need to push in a tanky ship, Kremlin is god tier at it. Add in Kuznetsov, which is the best commander in the game, and Kremlin just becomes an armored fortress that can push any flank. Biggest downside really is carriers, big carriers and DDs, but it's not like it's extra weak against them compared to any other battleship. So just really, really strong pick. Slava, not gonna be nearly as effective as I think as the Kremlin. Slava will be good at keeping the star, but Slava is better at mid to long range because it doesn't have really any air drag on the shells and incredible dispersion. Downsides is it has unmatchable armor. Slava is great in randoms because you can basically pick between 12 different targets, but in rank there's going to be much less targets to farm, and I would hope much less broadsides to farm, which will negatively impact Slava a fair bit. Z52. Okay, I need you to carefully look at this flag. You see that flag? It's a German flag. Don't play this DD. Hindenburg will probably be pretty good, especially if you have Gunther Lutyens. Gunther Lutyens' DPM buff just is really, really disgusting on a Hindenburg. And in the fact that you have 50mm HE pen, you are a big damage farmer. Big damage farmer. Kurfürst. I mean, Kurfürst tends to do okay the smaller scale it is, but it's so hard to justify. It's so hard to justify. Riftoffen is disgustingly powerful and just disgustingly good. Basically, any ship trying to play nose in is brutalized by the Riftoffen. Like when there's a carrier in a match, every single ship on both teams has to play differently. But when a Rifthofen is on either team, you have to play even more carefully because of the Richthofen's AP rockets. Because they are so horrendously busted and they can just do so much damage. The Richthofen's biggest problem is that these planes can create crossfires out of thin air. Normally, when you position against enemy ships, you try to position yourself in such a way that you don't get crossfired. The problem is that Manfred von Richthofen has these flying cruiser guns called AP rockets that can at any point fly around the ship and create a crossfire. And then you're caught in the situation, do you angle against the incoming rockets and get blocked by the enemy team because it's spotting at the same time, or do you just eat the full rocket volley on the broadside and eat 20k damage? So Richthofen is also unique in the sense that Richthofen can literally snipe enemy carriers, especially because of these AP rockets, because this is such a huge flat broadside to use those rockets on that he can just farm them for 20k AP rockets. So Richthofen can straight up snipe the enemy CV and kill him, so it's obviously the top tier pick, and it's retarded, like most CVs are in World of Warships. Daring, very strong pick. Very strong pick. It has heal for sustain, great gun power, decent torpedoes, single launch torps, YMCA ATI, thank you for the sub.
This is fucking animal.
It has the fast reloading smoke, which is especially good if you run into CVs, because you can smoke up and he gets bored and goes and looks for another target. It's just really, really good. Lepis TV, thank you for the 22 months. Oh, sorry, no, 22 man host. So Daring is just an all-round fantastic pick, as every year. And Minotaur, well, Stealth Radar Minotaur is always nasty.
I'm very
Stealth Radar Minotaur can Stealth Radar you at such close range, it makes it very, very effective. Okay, I'm running the meme build here to show it, I assume, but Smoke Minotaur, not going to be nearly as effective, especially with all the radars and torps and all that stuff, but Stealth Radar Minotaur is just filthy good, because what do you get the concealment down to? Something like 8-point-ish? Sorry, is it 9-point-ish?
You're not known to be a humble man.
Put the camo
But I
on.
wonder.
9.1.
Actually humble. I think I'm
9.1.
much more
Yeah,
humble
and
than
your
you
radar
actually-
range is 10 kilometers, so you can kind of just pop up right next to the enemy ship. The downside is,
Hi
of course,
Flamu,
you're easy
what
to
is
block.
your favorite number? Mine is...
Oh, it's that? That's amazing. Thank you, Slipper, for the 8 months. Goliath is a pretty shit pick. Goliath I don't rate very highly because, well, it depends on the matchup. If you get lucky and you end up against something like Montanas and Gorfors and such, where you can actually use your armor and you can just sustain, or you get to fight other cruisers, then back off and heal and return and so forth, Goliath can do decently. But the big issue is, of course, the 30mm plating that hides a citadel of 25mm behind it, which means you can get overmatch citadel by any ships that overmatch 30mm, which is in fact a lot of battleships, and it makes it hard to angle with this ship. It makes it much less reliable. Conquer, if you don't have the Thunder and you absolutely want to spam more HE, it's still not that good of a pick though. Conqueror, it kind of lacks the ability to blap ships. If you get broadsides, the guns aren't reliable enough and you can't really push in. Thunder can't really push in either, but on the other hand, the guns are just so filthy that you will end up, you don't generally need to push in because you're going to be blapping so many targets on the way. Thunder is always a strong pick. And even the likes of Kremlin, whatever, trying to push in can be farmed to death with Thunder HE because Thunder HE is filthy. So Thunder is absolutely going to be a strong pick, just like every year. Really, if your team gets steamrolled, then it doesn't really matter what ship you're running. Audacious, 2 HE focused. I mean, the issue is really you can't just instantly blap ships the way basically all the other carriers can. It has filthy rockets, but besides that, it doesn't have that alpha blapping power that pretty much all the other series have. Kleber, I really like Kleber. I think Kleber is a fun ship, and I think in ranked it can be effective, but it's a high skill cap ship. I would say that. You can't potato, you can't overcommit, you can't potato, you gotta play around, especially if there's CVs, it's an even higher skill cap ship because you have no smoke. Kleber is not an easy ship to play, but I would say you can still absolutely carry in the ship. It's fairly difficult. I struggle with the Kleber. I have a fair bit of YouTube vids on the Kleber on my YouTube because I really enjoy the ship. I think it's a lot of fun. Generally speaking, Kleber is more of a support DD. You go in behind your friendly DDs, or you go in sync with radar, and then as the DD gets radared, you annihilate him. That's really what you do best. Marceau is kind of like Kabat 2.0, mid to long range HE spammer. Supposedly supposed to have good AA. That's kind of been nerfed though, so it's not nearly as effective. Overall, you can farm a lot of you farm a lot of damage, but you're more of a cruiser than you're a DD, and you're not very good at it. It's just not as effective. Yeah, Yamato is really fun right now, someone mentioned, because Expert Marksman is bugged, which means the turret force is much better. Henry, well, besides just the nerfs, Henry kind of always struggled in ranked because as soon as you enter a match in the Henry, you're kind of up against the limit. You have to be, you're up against the clock. You have to use your damage to be more effective than the enemy cruisers with radar and utility are. So that's really the countdown. You need to do so much damage in the Henry from mid to long range, or you need to find such an effective flank or crossfire that you offset the downside of the fact that you're not bringing any close range DPM, you struggle to support your DDs, and you're not bringing any radar or any smoke utility to your team whatsoever. And that's not an easy task, and that generally means it's a fairly high skill cap. And the big issue is, of course, with all the nerfs to acceleration and with all the thunders and stuff in the game, Henry's troll armor isn't quite as trolly as it used to be. So hard to recommend Henry right now. Colbert has gotten, not just did Colbert receive a bunch of hefty nerfs right before it was released, Colbert got absolutely brutalized with the IFHE nerf. They put the pen with IFHE at 26 millimeters, which is of course brutal because that means even if you spec IFHE, you still can't farm cruisers with 27 millimeter plating. So you're just, there's no point in playing this. Colbert was never as good as the Smolensk because it's much thicker. So if you shoot the broadside Colbert, you citadel it easily. It doesn't have the troll citadel. It doesn't have smoke. It was always harder to play. The shell velocity, the arcs are more difficult. Colbert is a very high skill cap ship that's not particularly effective even if played perfectly, because it just has, Colbert has just gotten nerf after nerf since testing, and these days very hard to recommend it. I would not. I kind of hate the Republic. Its gimmick used to be overmatching armor. The downside is of course 32mm plating, which makes it easy to farm. I'm not really sure what I would play it for. Like the idea is of course of a flanking battleship using speed to flank, but the downside is the guns tend to be rather trolly and there are carriers in the game. Republic is pretty I know some people really like it and succeed in it, but I will admit I have personal bias against it. I don't really like the Republic. I think it's too inconsistent. And the problem is, in other ships, if the guns are inconsistent, like if I play Ohio and the guns are trolling me, if it comes down to it, I can still push in and make a play. In the Republic, if the guns are trolly and I need to push in, I melt. And that's what I don't really like too much about the Republic. It lacks flexibility. Bargonia, high skill cap, 380mm guns means ammunition choice is very important. Crossfires are incredibly important. You have a reload booster to offset your lack of caliber, but your armor is 32mm and your health pool is the lowest of all tier 10s at 74.7k. Bargonia is not an easy ship to play. It can absolutely shine because it's fast and it can pump out some devastating broadsides and some disgusting fire chance as well if you load HE. But if you don't feel comfortable in the ship, generally speaking, an average player will perform much better in the likes of a Kremlin or Thunder than in a Bargonia. Bargonia is harder to play, especially in ranked. Yu Yang, I mean, the only reason to play Yu Yang would be radar Yu Yang, but with carriers and the fact that Smolensk exists, no point. Venezia is, especially if there's CVs, Venezia will be strong. Venezia is a cruiser that kind of gave up all utility. It doesn't have radar, it doesn't have hydro, but if you can support your team and you get to blap some DDs or just farm some nose in Stalingrad, Petros, whatever, you can just farm. Oh yeah, the legendary upgrade for the Yu Yang, they changed that. What did they change it for? They changed it so that you have main battery. Okay. But wait, you give up concealment for it. Oh god. You give up concealment for it. So you still run radar. But you're still just a worse Smolensk. Yeah, but who cares if you can run smoke? You're gonna get outspotted by everything. What's the point? It's just a significantly worse Smolensk, no matter how you do it. Yeah, no. Bad pick. Venezia. If there's carriers and DDs, Venezia will always shine. Especially with CVs around. Venezia kind of benefits from it, even though it doesn't defend itself too well. Venezia does have the ability to just smoke up and force the carrier to go strike someone else, and when all that happens, you farm and so forth. Still don't think it's going to be a top tier pick, but it's always decent. Smolensk is really good against DDs. It's not that good against other stuff, but really good against DDs. It's a damage farmer now. You smoke fire almost the entire game. Yu Yang, I mean, damage farmer, 5% fire chance, 101.8k HE alpha, 6 guns, with 11.9 range. Like, you're gonna have to farm a whole lot of time to get any damage out of this thing. Like, bringing a Yu Yang because you want a damage farm? No. Ish. No. Sorry, I don't. Sorry, I cannot endorse that. Smolensk, though, especially if you run into DD heavy comps, what Smolensk does best is dumpster other DDs. Solid health pool, incredible speed boost, and just an insane amount of Dakka means that you can melt other DDs pretty damn effectively. And the radar is, of course, 7.5 km with 6.1 km stealth, so you can usually catch multiple DDs in the same radar as well. And you're kind of a DD/radar cruiser combination. And especially against DDs, you're really, really good. Once the DDs are dead, though, Smolensk struggles a bit to deal extra damage. It does have the advantage of having the super fast European torps of 80 knots with 12 km. The downside is, of course, because you build full gunboat, your torpedo reload is pretty oof. You're missing Holland for some reason. I am. I'm wondering, did I skip Holland or something? Where's Holland? Holland is going to be a solid choice, especially around carriers. Potato CVs, they're a threat to most ships, even if they're potato, but against Holland they eat a lot of flak and die. And Holland's torpedoes make it very effective, and it's a good gunboat. Holland is going to be a strong pick. I don't know why the Holland is missing here. I'm not sure what happened here. Perhaps some of the press camp, maybe it hasn't been updated. Regardless though, Holland, yeah, for some reason, there's the Jutland, but not the Holland. Huh? Regardless, Holland is absolutely a very solid choice. I don't see any downsides in running a Holland. You get outspotted by some other DDs, but most of the time you can make up for it in other ways. Most importantly, the 15 km narrow spreads that actually consistently land hits. That's, I think, all the ships, right? Brief overview of tier 10 ships. No matter which countries of ships in each DD, CL, Heavy Cruiser, BB and CV is your top choice. The best ship in each category. The best ship in each category. Carrier, Riftoffen. It fundamentally changes the way everyone plays. DD, probably Daring for the flexibility. Honestly, Daring is just, it's a smoke, gunpowder, torpedoes, heal. Daring is kind of the, it's just got so much flexibility to deal with kind of everything. Battleship, oh, that's a tough one. Maybe Kremlin? Kremlin with Kuznetsov is so damn good. Kremlin is just so damn good with Kuznetsov. Alternative pick might be something. Yamato with bugged expert marksman is pretty nasty as well, no joke. You can do a lot of damage with that thing right now. But honestly, there's a lot of good BBs. Thunder always a top competitor as well. For smaller scale though, I think Kremlin might be better just because you can push in and bully ships away, unlike what the Thunder can. What are the cruisers? Shit. Light cruiser. What would be light cruisers? Well, not the Rooster. Radar Minotaur is hard to play, but it can be superbly effective. That's a tough one. Smolensk is always good at farming, but it's kind of. I would say high skill cap Minotaur, lower skill cap Smolensk in terms of Nevsky. Oh yeah, I forgot about Nevsky. DM is a heavy cruiser, not a light cruiser. You potatoes. Yes, right in caps lock Des Moines doesn't change the fact that Des Moines is a heavy cruiser. We're talking light cruisers. I guess I forgot Nevsky was technically a light cruiser. Nevsky might be a pretty damn pick. Heavy cruisers. Shit. It's gonna be. Oh, that's such a hard question. I mean, I'd say Stalingrad, Petra, Des Moines are all super strong heavy cruiser picks. They're all super strong. Overall, like fundamentally, like every ranked season, as long as you're not picking something that's just fundamentally horrendously ineffective, like let's say you're set 52 or something, or you're trying to play Yoshino or something like. So as long as you're not basically picking the bottom of the barrel picks, or Hayate or whatever. What's going to decide your success more than anything is your own skill in the ship. How comfortable you are in the ship, or Kaba, yeah, something like that. As long as you're not picking those, your own skill in the ship is going to be the most important factor. And of course, because ranked is kind of small scale, getting lucky with teammates always helps. It's a simple fact. A lot of people don't want to admit it. I know people don't want to say it, but sometimes you just get a complete dumpster fire of a team, and it doesn't matter how perfect you play or how good your ship is. Sometimes you just get the guys that they play DD and they die in the first 2 minutes, and then you get steamrolled, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. But you shouldn't confuse that with thinking that the only thing that matters is matchmaking RNG. Your own skill has absolutely a huge impact on it every year, but there is some luck involved always. There is some luck involved always. Anyway, that should have pretty much been all the tier 10s. All the tier 10s. Let's put some